We wheel them and we turn them and we rock them and we sound them and we tempo them and laughs the rhythm sweet.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Rhythm Suite. I'm your host Felicia Renee. Now we all know that sports is a big deal in Jamaica. So today we're going to be flipping through the Gleaner and going straight to the sports section. So welcome back guys, we're sitting here with Lowe, who is a special projects editor for sports. Welcome.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Now, what does a special projects editor for sports mean?
Well, it's a little tricky. What we find in this day and age, the print media in particular, there's a lot of integration with special projects, with multimedia platforms. And so part of my responsibility, in addition to the traditional editing of news content, also entails, conceptualizing special projects, as the name suggests, that will not only drive revenue around the sporting events that we cover, but also raise awareness about our products and what we do here as a newspaper company.
So then what would be a special project?
All right, for instance, the recently concluded Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro, we started something that we called the Gleaner Athletics Club. What we found was that the Gleaner has been so deeply involved in shaping Jamaica's culture, from the government perspective, from the business perspective, from the general social perspective, but as far as sport was concerned, and particularly track and field, which we're so deeply involved in, we were never really involved in helping to develop the sport of track and field. And so in addition to offering comprehensive, whole-scale coverage of track and field like never before seen in our print or radio or online platforms, part of what we determined to do was to start a track and field club of sorts. That entailed clinics and special forums that were used to drive the stakeholders, the interest groups and so forth, just to play our part in helping to develop the sport of track and field. So we had a lot of training clinics, and we also, like I said, had some forums around, teaching athletes how to manage their brand, how to manage their money, and all the various nuances around anti-doping and stuff like that.
Oh wow, that I can't even begin to to conceptualize that myself. What would you say your motivation is?
Well, I'm first of all a big sports fan. I've always been a massive sports fan. I love everything related to sport, even golf. My motivation is a drive for constant, self-endowment and improvement. I always want to improve, and it sounds cliche, but I do want to be the best. But most importantly, I want to improve myself, and if by doing that I become the best, then that certainly would be worth it.
You spoke a lot about track and field, but you don't just focus on track and field.
No, I've kind of been pushed into a track and field box, not by choice. I do cover a lot of other sports. In fact, I started as a investigative reporter, covering everything from business to news, even lifestyle events. I remember one of my earliest assignments was mixology course that I did years ago when I was at another publication. So I do have an interest in many different fields. And as far as sport is concerned, I do love a lot of sports. In fact, I'm going to tell you a secret, but my favorite sport isn't track and field.
No?
It is football, what you might call soccer.
Why me must call it Jamaican?
Fair enough. Well, football is my favorite sport, but I do cover a lot of track and field, and it happens to be our most popular and most successful sport in Jamaica. So I've kind of been pushed in that direction. I guess I do a fairly decent job. So I am considered by most people to be a track and field journalist.
What would you say your creative process is before writing a piece?
Well, it depends on the story. If it's one of those, deep investigative exposés, it requires a whole lot of research, a whole lot of just sitting down and thinking the approach, ensuring that you tick all the box on the checklist to ensure that you have all the right sources, all the right source material, all the information necessary to process and then go forward with the story. For others, which are a little less serious, for me it's important to tell a story. I read a lot of books, right? And from John Grisham to Jonathan Kellerman, you name it, I read a lot of books, and I'm engrossed by the storytelling process. And I have always felt that sport writing in Jamaica was a little lagging behind in terms of how we tell a story colorfully to the people. So it's okay to go to a match and to say, well, Felicia scored a goal in the 15th minute, but what's the story behind Felicia and her goal? What did she do this morning before she went to the game. You know, what's her connection to the community that she's, or the school that she's representing. And so I think about that, and I try to prepare as best as I can before I go into a situation or an assignment, so that the story is a little bit different, and I'm able to hold the readers for as long as possible. Because, you know, in this day and age, people really don't have 10 minutes to sit and read a story, unless it's really good. So it's a daily challenge to get people to read a story from the very first letter to the final period.
To the end. How do you hook people like me who are just not into sports at all?
Again, you know, it's been different. You know, it's about finding a common source of interest, point of interest, that people are going to be pulled towards. It's a little easier when you're covering major assignments that's going to pull people regardless, like the Olympic Games, like the World Cup, like Boys and Girls Champs, which is huge for us, as you know, here in Jamaica. But again, it's really all about finding something totally different, that when someone picks up the paper or clicks on their website or looks on their tablet or their smartphone or whatever, they say, oh, really? I didn't know that about Shell and Fraser-Price. Oh, that's interesting. That's a very interesting fact about Usain Bolt. Oh, I didn't know Usain Bolt would have said something like that. So, you know, it's about trying to be different, and like I said, telling a story that's going to pull people to your product.
So can you give us any behind the scenes of all the, I mean, we know the names, Shelly and Fraser-Price, we know Usain Bolt, but we want some juicy tidbits from behind the scenes.
I don't know, I think we've seen enough behind the scenes of Usain Bolt in recent time.
All right, fair enough.
But I don't know, I do find that I do have a fairly close relationship with most of our top track and field athletes, simply because I've been covering them so much over the years, and we do happen to follow them all around the world. They're a little private. That's the main thing about Jamaican athletes. They're very private. Someone like Bolt, he can't avoid being in the public limelight just because of his overall appeal. But you'd find that a lot of Jamaican athletes, like most Jamaicans, they like to keep their business a little closer to home. There are a few stories I might have to think about those though before. Yeah.
All right, so he's being closed mouth, guys, but don't worry, we'll get it. Okay, so did you ever think that this is where you'd be, a writer for the Gleaner?
Funny enough, my mother tells me a story. I started reading very early. Or maybe I thought I was reading, but I from very early, I used to pick up the Gleaner newspaper and just flip through it as a young kid, 3-4 years old, before I could actually read properly. And I remember when I was pretty young too, when everybody wanted to be, you know, whether it's a doctor or a policeman or whatever it was, lawyer, I always wanted to be a broadcaster, interestingly.
Really?
Not really a newspaper
TV,
guy, but a broadcaster. I used to take the Gleaner, my mother says, sit in front of my dresser and, you know, flip through it, read the stories and pretend, looking in the mirror, pretending that I was actually on TV. So I always saw myself in media, and over time I developed the love for writing and the love for sharing a story. And I got an opportunity very early, not at this publication, but another smaller publication. Then eventually the opportunity came to come to the Gleaner, which of course is the #1 media entity in the Caribbean and everybody's dream.
Is that the story you told at the interview? Because that would get you the job.
Well, funny enough, the Gleaner actually came to me.
Really?
I was at the competing media house, and you know, they asked what I thought about the publication, and I mean, everybody wants to work at the Gleaner. If you're a Jamaican media personality or writer, you want to work at the Gleaner. You want to write for the Gleaner, and I felt that I could certainly play a part in helping to bring some sort of difference to the sports decks, and I think it might have worked out.
It worked. Stop being it worked out, guys. It worked. So then how would you say that your Jamaican roots have helped you come to this point?
As Jamaicans, first of all, we persevere. Like most young Jamaican men, my story was never one that was, I wasn't born with a golden spoon or a silver spoon in my mouth, for instance. You know, I had to work hard, and I had to rely on the help of many persons. Growing up, and again, that's the reality for a lot of Jamaicans. We know how to persevere, right? And we know how to take a not too great situation and turn it into something different, something meaningful, and something positive. And that whole attitude has certainly helped me when I'm faced with challenges. I certainly know how to deal with it. I'm not boggled by it. I don't get bothered too much about it, because I know that I'm a strong individual and that I've been through a lot, like others who are from this country and, you know, from the diaspora as well. I understand too that I have a great responsibility, not just to myself or to my family, but I represent a respected brand in media, and it's something that I consider and I take very seriously. So when I start typing or I start thinking about a story, I always remember, you're writing for the Gleaner, and this story will be seen by millions across the world. And they always say in media that you're as good as your last story. Nobody remembers the award-winning story you did 5 years ago. They remember the last one that was filled with errors last week. And so that's, these kind of things certainly drive me.
What don't people get to see about you sitting and creating a story?
Oh, they don't see the stress. That's for sure. For instance, I left here last night at about after 11. My typical day it ends at about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So people don't really see that.
And starts when?
It can start as early as 7, 8.
Oh my God.
There are times when it starts a little later, but regardless, if I start early or late, it's going to end about 10 o'clock in the night. And that's difficult too, especially considering that I do have an almost 3-year-old son, so that's not ideal. But people don't see that. They see when you're in Rio covering the Olympics, or you're in Beijing covering the World Championships, or London covering the Olympics there, or whatever. But it really is a lot of hard work. And I remember my first day in college, Northern Caribbean University, where I studied media. It was said that if you're here for glamour and for popularity and whatever, it's just not the place for you, because a large part of what we do is certainly not glamorous. And having to deal with the constant abuse and constant scrutiny and all that pressure of delivering on time every single day. It's difficult, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It's what I've always wanted to do.
Why do you love your job?
I tell you what, a lot of us do really, really difficult jobs. Jobs that require a lot of sacrifice and a lot of our time and everything. But if you do something that doesn't feel like a job, if you do something that you love, then you're doing what you ought to be doing. And journalism, media, the whole process of conceptualizing an idea and bringing a story to life, or telling of somebody's joy, or canvassing somebody's struggles or failures, that gives me tremendous joy. I feel that I'm doing what I was meant to do, and as a result, I'm happy about that. Hi guys, my name is Andre Lowe, Special Projects Editor for Sports at the Gleaner Company and the Rhythm Suite.